Hey folks, and welcome to another video from aplaintruth.info and questioning everything to find truth. John F. Kennedy, Secret Society speech, April 27th, 1961. This is a follow-up video from the previous one I did on JFK and the Mandela effect. All right, quote, "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. On infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has been conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned. No rumor is printed. No secret is revealed." And he made this next to Mr. Rockefeller, who was sitting right next to him on the dais at the time. A conspiracy is rarely, if ever, proved positive by testimony. When a crime of high magnitude is about to be perpetrated by a combination of individuals, they do not act openly but covertly and secretly. All right. This is a guy named Abraham Lincoln, who was also assassinated by the Jesuits. Google the Surratt family, John and Mary Surratt. John Surratt fled to the Vatican for asylum. Well, I think 6 or 7 Roman Catholics were hung for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Revisionist history indeed. "I feel more and more every day that it's not against the Americans of the South alone I am fighting. It's more against the Pope of Rome, his perfidious Jesuits, and their blind and bloodthirsty slaves." Abraham Lincoln to Charles Cinque. Knowing that the president was not going to escalate the Vietnam War, the intelligence community began to prepare for his assassination. Roman Catholic Lee Oswald was chosen to be the patsy as a CIA agent. He had been sent to Soviet Russia by Allen Dulles in '59 as a defector. Knowing that the CIA and the KGB had worked together during World War II, Oswald took a vacation for 2 years. He married a Russian whose uncle was a colonel in the KGB. I quote, "I know the Jesuits never forget nor forsake, but man must not care how and where he dies, provided he dies at the post of honor and duty." Abraham Lincoln, 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Cinque. When he returned to the American Empire in '62, he was associated with CIA agents Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, David Ferry, Guy Bannister, George D. Moore-Schilt, and Clay Shaw. Oswald was CIA related to the Jesuits. An interesting angle is presented by the Oswald involvement. His cousin is reported to be a Jesuit priest. As a matter of record, that Lee Oswald was invited to address the Jesuit College in Spring Hill, Alabama, on the subject of his activities 2 weeks before the Kennedy assassination. What are the odds? The Jesuit involvement closely parallels that in the Lincoln assassination. The Federal Reserve Conspiracy and Rockefeller's Emanuel Josephson, 1968. Quote by Adams, John, "My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but is supported by unquestionable authorities and is very particular and very horrible. Their restoration is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation of earth and in hell, it is the Society of Ignatius Loyola." John Adams, 2nd President of the United States. Think they were trying to warn us, folks? All right, and who was the director of the CIA in 1963? It was, of course, Knight of Malta, John McCone. Prior to that, McCone had been a defense contractor, formerly head of the Atomic Energy Commission. Later in 1970, he was board member of ITT, remaining in CIA consultant. Marchetti tells us, ITT board member who later admitted to the Senate investigation that he played the key role in bringing together the CIA and ITT was John McCone. Cardinal Spellman. Now, Cardinal Spellman was the Archbishop of New York, the most powerful man possibly in the Western world. It was Spelly's war about Vietnam, which is a whole other subject in itself, but he was pulling the strings behind all this. His soldier, John McCone, CIA participated in the Kennedy assassination. Jim Garrison and others approved that the FBI was involved in the assassination. Quote, Jim Garrison writes, "I already had concluded the parts of the local Dallas law enforcement establishment were implicated in the assassination, but now I saw the highly respected FBI was implicated as well. Cardinal Spellman had 2 agents in the FBI. The first was a Shriner Freemason and brother Cold Warrior J. Edgar Hoover. According to Loftus, Hoover had cooperated with the Vatican rat lines, resettling Nazi war criminals in the Northeast. The rat lines were the passports given to the Nazis to flee during Operation Paperclip so they could go down to Argentina and eventually come into the U.S. to run Nassau, and Bayer, a drug company, and many others infiltrated into the United States corporations and agencies of the government. Another quote about the Jesuits. Spellman's key man in the FBI was Knights of Malta Cartha DeLoach, very important man. As the third in command, DeLoach was in a position to supervise the assassination and suppress evidence. Garrison proved DeLoach did in fact suppress evidence. After the assassination, we see a telling relationship between Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, president after Kennedy was assassinated. DeLoach was known as Johnson's man in the FBI, and the president would call him any time of day. Kurt Gentry writes, quote, Lyndon Johnson couldn't sleep. Late at night, he had his aide, Marvin Watson, telephone to Loach's bedroom. The president had suddenly become convinced that the murder of his predecessor had been a conspiracy and wanted more information. Yeah, right. Quote, in the late 1950s, Kennedy's Catholicism was a political albatross, and he labored to distance himself from the church. One of the maxims of spiritual exercise is that if my superior says black is white and white is black, then that is the way it is. That is in his spiritual exercises. That is what is quoted in J.F.K. when Kevin Costner is telling the people, quote, hey, people, we've got to start thinking like the CIA. Black is white and white is black. Aleister Crowley, everything in reverse. The satanic mantra. That was the Jesuit giveaway that the Jesuits produced the movie because they're quoting Ignatius Loyola in the movie from his spiritual exercises. Now, this is a painting, and this painting is hung in the Vatican. It's a controversial painting of John F.K.'s dying moments on display of the Cathedral of St. Paul in the Vatican. The unveiling of the Vatican corresponds with a week-long symposium the church has convened on the Kennedy assassination. Now, again, they got the fake windows in here and the six-seater. And when I first quoted, or it looks like Kevin Costner right here too now, they added. I mean, this was not the picture that I originally posted. It has been altered, I can tell you positively. This painting was done. Mark Balma's Pieta shows a grief-stricken Kennedy, and it was painted, and it sits in the St. Paul Cathedral here. So we have confirmation on that. This is part of the Mandela effect, folks. They're in everything. They've changed it all. All right, so another very interesting fact is that Cartha DeLoach, who had signed a 5-year contract with Lee Iacocca's Ford Mercury in connection with the series The FBI. Both DeLoach and Iacocca were Knights of Malta, subject to Cardinal Spellman during the Kennedy assassination. Later, DeLoach went on to be the director of Pepsi, and according to Colonel Prouty, that company also participated in Kennedy's assassination. Nixon was in Dallas with the top executive of the Pepsi-Cola Company, Mr. Harvey Russell, the general counsel. Nixon was a legal counsel to that corporation. I think he's talking about Richard Nixon. That top executive's son had told of Nixon's presence in Dallas at the time of the assassination, and Russell has confirmed the accuracy of his son's account. Later, sometime after the shooting, Nixon was driven to the Dallas airport by a Mr. DeLuca, also an official of the Pepsi-Cola Company. In addition, the son of another Pepsi-Cola executive was in Dallas at the time and had dinner with Jack Ruby, Oswald's killer, the night before J.F.K. was murdered. Isn't that interesting? So as we go down further, DeLoach and Iacocca are Knights of Pepsi. Now PepsiCo all work together. At the time of the assassination in Dallas, the Catholic priest Oscar Schubert was sent from Holy Trinity Catholic Church in Dallas to administer last rites for the president. Knowing that Kennedy's wounds were wounds of entry, he reported everything to his superior. Schubert's superior was the Bishop of Dallas, then the Most Reverend Thomas Keeley Gorman, D.D., according to Martin Lee's article entitled Who Are the Knights of Malta, appearing in the October 14, 1983 edition of National Catholic Reporter. Thomas K. Gorman was a Knight of Malta. Being a brother knight, he reported directly to Cardinal Spellman and kept him appraised of what was happening in Dallas. So here you see how the Knights of Malta control everything, and above them, 13 Illuminati families of Italy that Fritz Springmeier wrote a book about. All right, so at the time of the assassination in Dallas, roughly 12:30 in the afternoon, all telephones went dead in Washington, D.C. for 30 minutes. I bet it was 33 minutes. How could this have happened? Someone at ITT had to be responsible. In 1963, one of the VIPs of ITT was Francis D. Flanagan. You guessed it. Flanagan was a Knight. Later, McCone and his brother Knights coordinated a deal between the CIA and AITT to work together. And here we see the integration between the presidents as the power base of the cardinal who, previous cardinal archbishop after Spellman was Cardinal Egan, Edward Cardinal Egan. The Knights of Malta control the money. The Knights of Malta control the banks. They control the Canada, Federal Reserve, Bank of England. They control the banking. In America, the Knights of Malta with their OSS, later their CIA, were behind the Operation Paperclip, as we've covered. Many were placed in top secret military installations known as Area 51. Operation Paperclip was overseen by America's most powerful Knight of Malta, Peter J. Grace. Peter J. Grace was the subject to the Jesuit-trained Archbishop Spellman, as the American headquarters of the Knights was and is St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. So a lot of this is excerpts from Eric John Phillips, who I have he's a racist and I don't agree with him, but he's written some very good stuff. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right, so you look down this list, and I'll post this list. Look at all the Knights of Malta members, man, folks. It's everywhere. Himmler, Hoover, Lee Iacocca, Clay Shaw, Prescott Bush. I mean, it's all right here. It's all these secret societies. The American section of the Sovereignty Military Order of Malta, or SMOM, has about 1,000 members, including 300 dames. They represent the vanguard of American Catholicism, the point at which the Vatican and the U.S. ruling elite intersect. Quote, the Knights of Malta comprise what is perhaps the most exclusive club on earth, said Stephen Birmingham, the social historian. They are more than the Catholic aristocracy, I can't even say it, can pick up a telephone and chat with people. And who are the American Knights? Mother Jones has managed to obtain part of their secret membership list. On it, we found some familiar names: Iacocca, Spiros Skouros, the shipping magnate, Robert, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, aerosol tycoon and Nixon confidant, Baron Hilton, John Volpe, former U.S. ambassador to Italy, William Simon, who served as Treasury Secretary and Energy Czar in the 70s, on and it goes. The author knows where several Knights of Columbus involved in the Kennedy assassination. Jeb Bush, Bush's brother and Father Bush's son, governor of Florida, Knights of Malta member. But the only knight who was involved was Senator Edward Kennedy, in that through his silence he was consenting to his brother's murder. Now, I don't believe this to be true, but I don't have any information to prove it's false. Again, this is conjecture, or there's no evidence to see this. I've never heard this before till now. Maybe this is what has driven the perpetual senator from Massachusetts to his ruined alcoholic life. Who knows? Let us take a few moments to pray for the senator. He might have a change of heart, that he would tell all, that we might protect him, for he too was subject to the power of Cardinal Spellman, no doubt. So they have the aristocracy, and we have the Jesuits. Black Pope. It's not Adolfo Nicholas now. There's a new one, or Peter Calvin back. But here they run the world. This is their communication network through all the aristocracies that are set up here. Lastly, we know the Mafia was involved in the Kennedy assassination. The Mafia, CIA, and Naval Intelligence has been working together throughout World War II. Ruby was a mafioso, and David Shem makes it perfectly clear in his Contract in America that the mob had two motives: the Kennedy brothers' assault on organized crime, and the loss of the mob's gambling paradise in Cuba. And the third thrown out there, they were both having an affair with the same woman. But those were not the reasons. The Mafia Doms were promised that they would take more money than Havana could ever produce through the explosion of the international drug trade made possible by the Vietnam War, Spelly's War. If they helped eliminate Kennedy, Johnson would escalate the war, and thereby the drug trade. The CIA would bring in the drugs in from the Golden Triangle, distribute them to the Mafia families, and both would profit. George Bush was CIA. George Sr. Bush was known as George Poppy Bush, after the poppy fields. It's right here, folks, right here. The Jesuit Bishop Gom Carroll, as I've spoken many times, was the richest man in the country in the 1700s. Founded Georgetown 6 months before. Washington, D.C. was originally named Rome, Maryland. The branch of the Potomac River was called the Tiber. Tiber and Rome, like Rome. Washington, D.C. has 7 hills. Capitol Hill is one of them. Meridian Hill, Floral Hills, Forest Hill, Hillbrook, Hillcrest, and Knox Hill. February 23rd, 1871, the Organic Act founded the federal government. So few know it. More importantly, the Mafia's commission had a favor to repay. Spellman, through FDR, had arranged the release of Lucky Luciano because of the Operation Underworld mentioned in the previous chapter. Now, the cardinal needed a favor. He refused. Spellman could use the entire intelligence community, which he had helped to organize, to eliminate any mob boss he chose. If he agreed, new gambling centers would open up, Atlantic City in particular. Cue Donald Trump and Trump Towers. Clearly, if the president was removed, everybody... Oh, Trump went to Fordham University, folks, too. Jesuit school. Bill Clinton, Georgetown Jesuit School. Out here in California, Governor Newsom, Jesuit minister, now Governor of California. He's going to be followed by Gavin Newsom, former mayor of San Francisco, Santa Clara Jesuit University. Clearly, if the president was removed, everybody would acquire more power and wealth, the intelligent community would become more absolute, and the cardinal would be even more respected by his peers in Rome, and the rest is history. And here's this video that has been altered showing the fake roof, the six-seater, and all that. In 64, for the first time in history, the Pope of Rome set foot in the 14th Amendment America. Cardinal Spellman performed well and was rewarded by a visit from his master, fellow Cold Warrior and Vatican rat-light handler, Cardinal Montini, who is now Pope Paul VI. Between 7 and 10 shots were fired from 4 different assassins, but Lee Harvey Oswald never fired a single round. 2 of the shooters were CIA contract agents. 2 were actually picked up by the cops and released. Another one flew out of Dallas untouched. Of the 4, I was personally acquainted with 3 of them. According to Hugh Huggins, 1993, Joe Kennedy CIA chameleon assassination breaking the silence. There was yet another reason for the removal of President Kennedy. He wanted to arm Israel. I'm not going to get into that, but there's also he was going to create like Lincoln did, greenbacks, and tie our money system to the country and not to the international bankers, which was another big reason. Also, the Black Pope. Many people don't even know about the Black Pope. The Black Pope, Superior Jesuit General, the President of the World, speaks at Loyola Military Fortress University in his unratified 14th Amendment, quote, Little Rome, end quote, D.C. United States Corporation. He lies about his power. He is over the Pope as of 18.4a Corporation under International Maritime Admiralty Law, the Universal Commercial Code, or UCC, based upon the Vatican canon law and perfected by the Roman Empire. The Black Pope only serves and works with the shadow Jesuits, being the papal bloodlines Orsinis, Breakspears, Aldobrandinis, Farneses, Samoggias. The next in power beneath the Jesuits is the Bourbon King Juan Carlos of Spain, who's part of the Knights Order of Jerusalem. The Roman monarch of the world, the King of Jerusalem, and SMOM military navigator. This is the true world's power system right now. Adolfo Nicolas Panchon, the current Black Pope, serves as the military general protecting the Zoroastrianism and Mithraism mystery schools. All right, and here you see Time magazine talking about the Holy Alliance when Ronald Reagan reinstituted diplomatic relations with the Vatican after they had been banned since after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. They were banned from diplomatic back and forth until Reagan reinstituted the Holy Alliance because of the Jesuits and Roman Catholic assassination of Lincoln. It took that long for the Vatican to get diplomatic working relationships again. Fact. And here we see Allen Dulles, who was the director of the CIA and Knights of Malta with J.F.K. His brother was John Forrester Dulles, who served as U.S. Secretary of State under Eisenhower from 1953 to 59. His nephew is Jesuit Cardinal Avery Dulles. You can't make this stuff up. Again, in Plausible Denial, reviewed Hunt's connection with the pompous Buckley on page 2007. Jordan Liddy completed his testimony stating that while he no longer associated with Hunt, he had seen him last, he recalled, when both men demonstrated their support for another CIA officer, William Buckley, as Buckley celebrated the anniversary of his television show at the New York Yacht Club. Hunt was the close to both powerhouses, both Buckley and Luce. Luce is the owner of Time magazine. Hunt was also working with 2 of his fellow criminals in the future Watergate scandal. G. Gordon Liddy, Jesuit trained, and Chuck Colson. We're talking about the Nixon secret tapes and when Nixon had to leave. All right, so since World War II, the CIA has. Now, one note here, there's a book called The Entity. It's about who oversees the CIA, the M16, the Mossad, NSA, and all those. The overarching in the Vatican is the Entity, and you need to understand that. There's not a lot of information, but the book on the Entity explains it really well. So since World War II, CIA subsidized the Catholic lay organization, served as political slugging arm of the Pope and Vatican throughout the Cold War. It's penetrated the American section of the wealthiest and most powerful Vatican orders, passed money to a large number of priests and bishops, some of whom become witting agents in CIA covert operations. They employed undercover operatives to lobby members of the Curia, the Vatican government, and spy on liberal churchmen of the Pope's staff who challenged the political assumptions of the United States, prepared intelligent briefings that accurately predicted the rise of liberation theology, and collaborated with right-wing Catholic groups to counter the actions of progressive clerics in Latin America. Yeah, the School of the Assassins down in Georgia, where they go and train all the leaders to be assassins down in the School of the Americas. I went down there and helped protest, and the protest was run by the Jesuits, and I didn't know it at the time. Also, another note, Pope Francis, the current Pope, is the first Jesuit Pope in 600 years in the Vatican. You can't make this up. All right, so I'm going to leave it here. You know, the Maltese Cross, the Red Cross, the Knights of Malta, the Double Eagle, all of this is part of their secret society and club, which are just disclosing the Ku Klux Klan, the Knights of Columbus. Look at the British flag. They're just opposite. Remember, reverse, how it works. And there's a good video to watch. The Vatican protects pedophiles. Please, and I'll put it in the show notes here. Please read about the abuse going on. All right, and we're going to close here with Mr. Kennedy. A revolution is coming. A revolution which will be peaceful if we are wise enough, compassionate if we care enough, successful if we are fortunate enough. But a revolution which is coming whether we will it or not. We can affect its character. We cannot alter its inevitability. And then here's the extreme oath of induction, folks. I put it all in here. I hope you read it. It is very, very disturbing, the oath these people take and what they're willing to do, mostly men, to anyone based on the Pope's sole discretion. When opportunity presents, I will extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth. I will secretly use the poison cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private. This is the oath they take. This is the fourth vow, and I hope you read it all because this is real. All right, folks, plain truth. Thanks for listening. Appreciate all you sticking with me through all this. We're going to love, we'll find a way. Love one another. Peace out.